Greetings, kings and queens. Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome back to the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform for another Sunday afternoon broadcast. This afternoon, we're going to be talking single and satisfied or single and suffering. So I said that with a little too much glee just now, didn't I? So, I have with me three panelists who are going to be helping me to unpack this discussion today. And I believe that this is going to be a very interesting, very insightful, maybe even a little controversial, but I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. So I'm going to give my panelists an opportunity now to just introduce themselves. And we're not wasting any time today because there is so much to discuss here. And we do not want to be here all night. So I'm going to go straight into the introductions. I'm going to give each panelist an opportunity to say who they are, and then we're going to get into this conversation right away. So let's start with Jamal. Jamal, greet the people.
Oh wow, I was expecting to be first, but anyway, good evening and good morning wherever you are, good afternoon wherever you are across the world. I'm Jamal Francis. I guess by day I'm a government legal officer across two ministries, Foreign Affairs and Agriculture, and I'm a musician. I start to play around and do stuff like that, and then
He's
I'm
being
also,
modest, but all right.
I'm also part of the Antigua and Barbuda Cycling Federation. I'm also the secretary of the Roadrunners Cycling Club. So that's just it. But I do tend to have opinions, and I like to challenge other opinions as well. So we shall see how the discussion goes today. So.
All right, great. Let's go over to Manifa.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monifa St. John. I am a mental health advocate. I guess that's where most of you would know me from. And like Jamal, I also work in the government, Ministry of Health. And besides that, what do I like to do? I like to take part in discussions such as this one. So I'm happy to be here this evening taking part in this discussion.
All right, very good. She left out a very important thing. She's a founder or co-founder of Mental Health Talk Antigua, which is really how she and I became acquainted. So I don't know why everybody's being so modest here today, but she's a mover and a shaker who's out here transforming the mental health landscape. So since she didn't say that, let me just go ahead and just put that in there for her. You're welcome, Manifa. All right.
Thank you, Therese.
And now over to Jason. Greet the people.
Okay, good evening, everybody. It's always a pleasure. Platforms, opportunities like this help me to learn a lot from the other panelists. And I know I will learn a lot this evening. I must say, I think that the topic is probably one of the most interesting and difficult one to dissect. And I hope that this evening we'll all have a wonderful time. We're here basically to bounce knowledge around, hoping that somebody will gravitate to it and see the benefit of using it, probably personally or with others.
All right, excellent. Let me take a moment and greet the people in the chat section because y'all know we haven't even started the discussion. You know, the chat section is already on and popping, right? Well, I see Monique. Greetings, Monique. Greetings, MJ. I knew MJ was going to be here for this. Greetings, Saran and Sandra. And Sandra has already declared which team she is on. Okay, we didn't even throw the question out there yet, but Sandra has declared single by choice and so happy. Why is Jamal snapping? Jamal, calm down. So, welcome in, Sandra. Thank you for joining us. And Chris. Oh, Chris, thank you. Sending big love to Chris. Chris is an ardent supporter of the Always a Queen platform. She says these panelists are awesome. They need to put some respect on their own names. Right? I mean, I'm trying to say, like, they're just here trying to be modest and whatever. Anyway, moving right along into this discussion. This afternoon's talk is entitled Single and Satisfied or Single and Suffering. First question of the day. Are all single people really miserable and unhappy people? Are they just out here pretending like, like people like Sandra. Sandra says single by choice and so happy. Is Sandra putting on a show for the public, for the culture? Because, the culture makes it seem as if singleness is a flaw. Like you're not married, you don't have a partner, there must be something wrong with you. I've even heard people making an argument that once people get past a particular age and they're single, that is a definite certain manifestation that something must be wrong with that person. I hear people, especially men, making this argument all the time, like, oh, if she past 30 and she's still single, that means it must be something wrong with her. There must be a reason why she's single. It must be that she has some character flaw that nobody can live with or whatever it is. And so what's up with that? So I don't know who wants to jump in first. I feel like Jamal, since he was already snapping.
No, I think I defer to Monica because I think she would set, a very good parameter for us to contain our excitement.
All right, Manifa, get into it, Manifa.
I will take the mantle up and I will say, I think that's a myth. Quite frankly, I think single people can definitely be extremely happy and satisfied and content, and whatever other positive adjective you want to put at the end of that. I think it all falls within loving yourself. I think if you love yourself and you can be content and happy and satisfied with yourself, then it's great. Like, I think persons who are single and suffering need to work on their self-love. That's just my honest opinion, and I'm putting it out there early. So head on over to Always a Queen, and you can work on that self-love. Definitely if you're single and suffering.
That is what we do. That is what we do. We help to cultivate self-love and self-esteem over here on the Always a Queen platform. I mean, just visit the video section. You will find at least 25 videos there that are addressing self-love. I'm pretty sure in some form or another. But I just want to jump in before Jamal does and say that while I'm not saying that I disagree with Manifa's argument, I want to say that I've also heard arguments against that position, meaning that people are, out here saying, yeah, I love myself. So what does that mean? Does that mean it's supposed to cancel out my desire to find a partner? Like, I don't want to be loving myself forever and ever. What's up with that? If I'm single and dissatisfied, that means I don't love myself sufficiently. I've heard that argument. I am not putting a position out there as my own. I'm just saying I've heard arguments for both sides. So how would you refute that? I'd be interested in hearing how you come back. If somebody says, I feel like I have pretty good self-esteem. I feel like my self-love is where it ought to be, but I am also not happy being single. Like, I need a partner. I'm sick of loving myself. Like, I need somebody to love me.
Like, so what's wrong? There have to be something. So what's the point? What's the problem? Like, the problem has to be, there has to be an issue why you're single, and if you're unsatisfied with being single. I feel like if you say that you have self-love and you have worked on yourself and you're all of the above, and are you putting yourself out there? Are you doing the work in order to find your partner? Are you dating? Do you have this closed, like, this barrier in front of you to prevent you from finding your someone, right? So there has to be something that's preventing you from finding your special someone. And hey, if you need help with that, then you work on that. But I'm saying that the persons who are dissatisfied with their life, there have to be a problem. There has to be an issue, and that's just my stance on it. I mean, if there's no issue, then you should be with someone.
Okay, she
But
said what she
is
said.
is
Speak on it,
is there,
Jamal.
is there an issue? I don't see an issue if someone is single. I think sometimes we tend to link dissatisfaction in our lives, other parts of our lives, and try to hook it up to, okay, the biggest donkey of them all, we're single, and that is it. Not so it's like transferring a lot of these bad, experiences, current situations onto that, and they're not necessarily linked. For example, you maybe have problems on the job in terms of your interpersonal relationships, and then you're linking that, say, oh, maybe that's why you can't get a man or a woman, because you're very difficult to deal with, not knowing maybe possibly maybe on the workplace it might be something else different in terms of your human relations. But generally, I don't see it as an issue in terms of being single. I think it's actually good. You're not broke. One, you're always happy. I'm going to go right into it. You also have to look at the fact that maybe two, you want to maintain particular standards, or attract particular standards, or have particular standards, and that you'd want to somewhat parallel with your expectations and whatnot. And it's just that all you're just seeing out there is trash, for lack of a better term. So it's a matter that, instead of putting myself into a situation where I'm going to end up being hurt, going through a lot of these emotional ups and downs and whatnot, let me preserve my current state, which is satisfaction, until the right person comes along. And the right person may never come along, because if you look at it outside, that you know things may not even be prospective in terms of what you want as well. And two, another point is that some persons are just not meant to be coupled up, and in this new age tripled up. But it's just the fact that some of us just have to accept who we are, because Monica made a very good point in terms of, and here's where I would sum up my introduction here, that we can't love others, like others, until we like ourselves, until we learn to love ourselves, until we know who we are. Because sometimes we rush into relationships hoping to fill voids, or hoping that this sort of love that have been missing even from parentage, growing up, childhood, coming up, that's somewhat a relationship will be able to somewhat solve a lot of these emotional issues. So I guess we have to work on ourselves before we can then seek to create interdependent relationships, or even dependent relationships.
Right, right. I feel like I heard Jamal say, without saying, that there is pee in the dating pool. I feel like he kind of he kind of suggested that in a subtle, underhanded kind of way. Are you one of those people who believes there's pee in the dating pool?
Yes, I say from personal
He
experience.
said
Huh?
yes.
I, I do want that. I kind of decided to go to a different tangent, but let's go there, because I do find from personal experience, because after secondary school, I lived pretty much away. So different expectations. I find persons don't know how one to date. It's always either, they only contact you when they want something, or is the case where, you end up being a glucose partner in some cases, or they want you
Please
to
define glucose partner for the mere mortals on here.
Sugar daddy.
basically, exactly, being a sugar daddy, being a sugar
Oh,
mama.
this is the politically correct way to say sugar daddy.
Yes, yes.
Glucose
Or
partner.
this is splendor.
Listen, I'm writing that down. Because what?
And then two, I find too, it's the social media dilemma that a lot of persons tend to go into relationships because of what they see on social media, and they want to replicate a lot of that. So it's about doing things for the gram, doing things for the book. So we go to this place, so you take selfies, so you spend most of your time taking pictures and all of that. Another thing too, and a major problem too, is communication. We don't know how to communicate honestly and thoroughly. I find in these parts, like, how are you feeling, keeping in constant contact? Yeah, you're not going to be on the person like white on rice, but at least those subtle good morning messages or keep in touch, and being emotionally intelligent in terms of, okay, I may not vocally express a particular matter or maybe an issue that I may have or maybe something that I like, but at least you can pick it up and be able to engage with it and maybe open up the person, to be open to you as well. And it's another factor as well too, that a lot of persons, maybe because of their homes as well, from where they come from, is the aspect of, again, going back something I mentioned, interpersonal relationships. Yes, you have, and I find too that a lot of persons would treat relationships in a relationship like if they're treating like their friends and whatnot. You can't have the same sort of engagement with a friend as you would have with a partner. And that is a fundamental problem I've come across a lot. And even something simple as, if a friend decides, okay, well, say you were supposed to go out with a person, let's say you're going to the beach or some other outing, but then a friend who has been their friend for quite some years before you say, tell that person, let's go out somewhere. So now the person is stuck, you, the partner, or the friend that existed before the partner. And then invariably they tend to choose the friend, which is an experience I've had, who's been there. And it's like, and then when you bring it up, it's like, oh, it's not something I know. It's just, I don't want to disappoint friends who've been there before you. And so it's a matter of understanding the role of a partner in your life. And that is what it boils down to for me, that a lot of persons do not understand that. And from that, for me, I'm not going to hurt up myself, because in my job, I'm stretched out a lot. So the last thing I even want, if I'm going to entertain, let's say, going into a relationship, I don't want to have an added stress. I have to deal with legal issues day in, day out, and to be now hurting up my head about, somewhat training a person how to be in a relationship. And yeah, I'm not perfect. No one is perfect, but at least two sides must be willing to meet at the center. And maybe it's just a different culture, because as I say, first world dating might be different from our type of world dating as well in terms of our expectations. But I think maybe the people replicating what they see on social media, again, the not understanding how to communicate, how to engage, and understanding their role in a relationship, the do's and don'ts, all of that is why I say being single is best.
Dr. Brown, say something, sir. Is there
I,
king in the dating pool? Or you don't care about the dating pool anymore because you're married now?
of course, I'm happily married as well. Um, to be honest, I think especially for the onlookers, there's a reason why I would have said that the topic can be extremely difficult, because I think there must be some definition that is thrown around, because there are many multiple categories of singleness. And there are some singleness that actually leads to high levels of suffering. Now, you have, for example, you have persons who are single because probably that person established, have the title of being a widow or widower. You have persons basically going through separation or divorce. You have single parents today, persons who have to raise the children on their own, who go through a lot of heartache and pain and turmoil, and all these are categories of singleness. You have some singles who choose not to get married, at least not now at this present time. And you have some singles who decide to remain the way they are, probably for the sake of whatever they think supersede anything else. So they are categories. But if we're leading down to us in terms of being single, absent of almost all of those that I would have said, and we are looking at being single as opposed to being married, that category, what I will say is that what qualifies an excellent marriage is is almost the strength or excellent singleness. A lot of time people don't understand what singleness entails, and I think because they do not understand it, a lot of people don't appreciate it. Your marriage can only be excellent if your singleness was superb. Singleness is almost like the foundation of our existence on this earth. singleness is a time where we have to spend, as Monifa said, and of course, as the Honorable Francis said, singleness is a time that you spend with you, to understand you, to know about you. It's a time when you go to the psychologist, and the time when you go to psychotherapist, and the time when you go and find out your history and find out about those traumatic experiences. That is what singleness is about, learning about you, learning about your self-esteem, learning about what ticks and what talks. All of these things, that singleness, it prepares you for the next step. But the challenge that we have is that a lot of persons just see singleness as, I need a mate now. I cannot handle the emotional side anymore, whereby singleness surpasses just emotion, because it's almost like you're preparing yourself so that when you get into marriage, Therese, if perchance the person decides to leave you, you are leaving happy to some extent, because you were not sucked, because you came full. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. When you go in full, you go in knowing yourself, who you are, your self-worth, and so on. So I will tell anybody, an excellent step beyond singleness is an excellent singleness, because that is the foundation of every single thing.
Agreed. Agreed. So I want to throw a big question in here, but before I do that, let me just take a quick look at the comment section, because we have a lot of comments in the comment section. I don't want those persons who are interacting with us to think that we are ignoring them. So let's highlight a few comments quickly. I'm not going to highlight every comment, so don't come for me if I don't pull up your comment, people. Sandra says, no, ma'am, I have had some very bad relationships. I was once married for 2 years and raised my son single-handedly. I love making decisions for myself. Okay, well, Sandra said what she said. Oh, she continues and she says, uh-oh. She says, right now I'm curled up in bed with my sister. Didn't cook lunch, doing what makes me happy. Sandra's living her best life. All right. This is an interesting comment from MJ. MJ says, we're socially raised to always be in a relationship or with someone. Solitude isn't embraced as much as having a partner. It's some sort of a badge of honor to have a relationship status, even if the relationship is dying. Agreed. Especially for women. Even if you're a boss, you have a degree, you're ambitious, your children aren't hungry, you are somehow nothing without a man. It's how we measure success. I want to say something about, actually, I agree with Marcella. I agree with MJ. 100%. And I want to take that a step further. And I want to say this is also how society treats women who do not have children. It's not just manlessness, it's childlessness that also somehow makes you flawed and inferior. You could have 100 degrees, you could be highly accomplished, you could be successful beyond measure, you could be changing the world. People are still going to come back and say, so why you don't have any children? Because that cancels out everything else. And so I feel like that like those two often go hand in hand. And I want to throw that question to the panel, and I want to ask, are we culturally programmed to believe that as women and perhaps as men too? I feel like the pressure probably sits more on the women, but I believe the men also have some pressure. So I don't want to leave them out. We're not going to have a biased discussion. But are we culturally programmed to believe that singleness is somehow a curse? Singleness and childlessness. You're flawed, you're cursed, something is wrong with you. We feel sorry for you, as a matter of fact. We pity you because, oh my, what, is this some type of cultural programming? Where does this come from?
I believe that because we tend to craft ourselves and define ourselves as a Christian society, and not even expand it to a religious society, we tend to look at the archetype. Adam and Eve in the garden, God telling them to be fruitful and multiply. Missions. So I think from time memorial to now, and I think, persons do feel in terms of how society ought to be created and the constructs of society, that one, person can't be single, and two, a person can't be childless because they have no role in terms of the perpetuation of society. And because you can't extend society to the next generation, people think you've failed because of that old Adam and Eve in the garden, be fruitful and multiply premise. But if we do look at it, everyone can't be the same. Biologically, we're all different. And as such, if we do not fit into the archetype of that, then are we supposed to be, do we have no contributions to society? Can't we contribute to other parts of society in terms of the upliftment? And I think even going a bit further too, I find that maybe because persons who tend to project that sort of, and I call it vile sort of attitude that, you're single, you're useless, you're childless, you're useless, that because maybe a lot of these people, they haven't accomplished much in their lives, to be honest. So the only thing that they can hold on to is that they fit with the traditional view, traditional role of what they're supposed to do in society. And I think for persons who always have to encounter that, for example, I go to church and an elder would say, "Oh, you come back from the UK, now you're in a good job here. Where's the wife?" And you're bombarded with this every weekend. And I'm like, I don't want one. Like, I'm not about that. I have other priorities set. And that's another aspect to that. A lot of people tend to even though you may be able to fulfill these traditional roles, that some persons have other priorities in life, getting themselves settled down, whether, getting an education upright to, well, to terminal degree, or they're trying to get a home, establish themselves, get some experience in their careers and whatnot. Even working out some internal issues that they have before they could, you know, pair up with somebody and, bring some of those bad luggage with them, But is this sometimes, especially, and I find it from the older generation, that they're forcing you to conform as young people. And it's a constant badger. I've got to the point too that when I see certain people, I just avoid or even run because I know they're going to be coming with this sort of thing. So the question now is, especially for young people, like, how do we and how should we respond when we are being subjected to this? Because personally, I've been, as I said before, subjected to it, and it has become very troubling to the point whereby if I'm avoiding people, and it's even causing me to double think my position, because you're being badgered with it all the time. It's like, how should we respond in a healthy way? And how two persons who perpetuate that sort of, narrative, how too should they learn to not do what they're doing?
I
No, go ahead, Manifa.
I wanted to jump in, and I really respect what Mr. Francis has mentioned in terms of what his experiences. I've also experienced that as well, but I do have a child, right? So I've gotten that part taken care of. But the problem is now, well, where's the father? Why are you not married? A beautiful young lady like you, Lahana man, what's wrong with you? I've gotten the list of questions as well, and it's really sometimes I have to rehearse answers and what to say, and I have to make like slick comments to different people depending on who it is. So if it's an elder in a church, I have to be humble and say, well, it will come soon. But if it's somebody at work who trying to be nosy, I'm gonna come back with something slick and be a little rude. But the problem is our society has that construct of, yes, we have to be married, you have to have babies or children, and that is what the woman should be. Our womanhood should be to be fruitful and multiply. So and to have a husband to do that for. Or I cook sometimes. Most people close to me know that I cook well, and they're saying, "Oh, you cook so good. You had a man for cook for," that kind of comments, and it's like, why can't I do it for myself? So it's us young people, we have to learn to develop that, that strength to be okay in our singleness, and that strength to stand up to the bullies, because that's what they are, the bullies of society, that thinks that you have to have a man, you have to have a child, and that is what's going to make you accomplished, right? What makes you accomplished is what makes you happy. And that's that. It doesn't, you don't even have to have a degree, you don't even have to be, whatever your level of success might be in your mind, what makes you happy, that is what you have to live up to. And it doesn't mean that you need to have a man, it doesn't mean that you, let's say, a partner, because we're living in 2022. So it doesn't mean that you have to have a partner, and it doesn't mean that you have to have an offspring, a child. So what it means is that your happiness should be paramount, and that's how I feel.
Yeah.
If I may
Tracy?
add first, I totally agree that your happiness is paramount, but I think sometimes that, not to be hard on society here, I think sometimes that we often forget that we are the ones who make up society. All of us have our rhetoric out there. Every one of us have our beliefs, and every one of us share what we think should be the case. It so happened that sometimes when it comes to us, we don't know how to accept it. Some of us are excellent givers, but we can't receive. And so when we give, we expect other persons to see our position. Let me give you for an example. A single person who desires to remain single will be sharing that out there. So that person will be sharing the benefits of singleness. Why am I single? How happy I am being single? How self-satisfied I am being single? That's a part of society. So it means that sometimes we have to select the people around us who believe what we believe so we can encourage each other. I think sometimes we go with everybody and everybody bringing something else, and sometimes we get distracted. One of the things I've learned, because that question came so many times, and guess what? It did not bother me. Teresa, no, it did not bother me.
I know that.
It did not bother me because I realize sometimes for us as individual, we are very much unstable with our stance. We do not know what we believe in, and sometimes because we don't know what we believe in, anything that is said shift us because we are not cemented in what we believe in. If I believe that singleness is for me, you can say whatever you want. You can talk about how many children I should have got, how many women I should have got. You can talk about it till you die. I know what I believe in, and trust me, you will not distract the temperature of this image. It doesn't matter what you do. And a second thing that I realized for us, we are lazy with our singleness. Every time somebody says something, again, it can tick us because we do not know what we are doing with our singleness. Sometimes we just exist, but are you existing by working on developing you? Are you existing by becoming the best you, or are you just existing? And these are things that we have to look at. But as far as I know, once you believe what you believe and you stand on what you believe, and what's that is a strong pillar for anybody to fight against. And once you know that you're working on your singleness to develop you, to make you the best you, is also a strong fight that you can put out there.
Agreed. I like that. Let's have a quick look at the comment section. D says, cans of worms. We can see how womanhood is applied to procreation. We can also, I think she has an error here. We can also say that we have adopted cultural norms, not our own, yet fully integrated into our society, where the woman is valued to the extent of her ability to bring children into the world. I think that is a very sound point that she's making there. Charmaine says, being single should be celebrated. Not everyone has the mindset for marriage. That's why I'm taking the conversation next. We're coming for that, Charmaine. We are coming. That's exactly where we're going to go next. But before we go there, I want to highlight this comment from Saran because I am in full agreement. Saran says, don't hold back. Tell them to mind them business. People so fast and they're not really concerned about you. They just want to be in your business. Agreed and 100% endorsed. That is where I have gotten, quite literally. That's where I have gotten. I used to be doing what Monifa described. Monifa says that she practices and she rehearses appropriate and politically correct, respectful responses for the elders who keep asking her when she's going to get a husband and what have you. And, I used to be rehearsing responses and now I do not. I don't have any rehearsed responses. I straight up tell people, mind your business. Mind your business. Right? Yeah, I tell people that all the time. I tell people that all the time. I have also recently started telling people who constantly badger me about not having children that I already have 3 children and I am currently pregnant with the fourth. The first one is called bachelor's degree in psychology. The second one is called master's in counseling psychology. The third one is called master's in linguistics. And the fourth one that I'm currently pregnant with is called PhD in human development and family science. How many children you got and how much money are they making you? Right? So I'm like, people leave me alone. Mind your business. Just mind your business. Right? And I feel like when you get to the point where you have to start just being rude with people, that's when you know that we have some societal issues that absolutely need to be addressed. Like this is a problem. This is a problem. Like nobody should be pushed to the point where they feel like they have to be rude to you so that you can back off and quit with the boundary violations because that's actually what it is. It's a boundary violation. It really is. Um, we seem to have lost Manifa. I think Manifa is having some technical issues. Let's hope we can get her back um, in a minute. But we're going to proceed with the discussion. And I'm going to go exactly where Charmaine was taking the discussion just now in the comment section, where she spoke about people who do not have the mindset for marriage. I want to ask this question. Do you think that there are people who are called to be single? And I want to kind of create context around this question. Um, yeah, so I I often use Oprah as the example when I ask people this question. And I believe I shared this with you when we were preparing for this live discussion. And I like to use Oprah as an example because Oprah is probably one of the most successful women on the planet. Literally, the most successful, the most powerful, the most well known, also one of the richest women on the planet, without exaggeration. She also never married and never had any children. I think that there are people, I believe that there are human beings who are called to live that kind of life. I believe that. I believe that there are humans who are gifted to just remain single and childless because whatever purpose was placed on their lives is bigger than the societal expectations that they're going to marry and become parents. I believe also that there are some people who are called to walk certain paths in this life, who are called to make certain changes in the landscape of the world, and that it does not allow for, it does not leave room for family and children and spouses, etc. I believe that firmly. And I'm not a theologian. Drayson can speak to this, but I believe that even the Bible addresses this, where the Bible literally speaks to the fact that there are some people whose calling requires that they not attach themselves to a spouse or a partner because it is going to impede the purpose for which God put them here. Literally, because your purpose just does not leave room for you to properly rear children. It doesn't leave room also for you to properly interact with a spouse. Relationships and marriages require an emotional investment, and people underestimate that. If you don't have time for it, don't get into it. And truth be told, sometimes your purpose just does not allow for that. And what is more important, getting married and having children, or fulfilling the purpose for which God put you here on the earth? Literally, which is more important? If you ask me that question, I'm going to say fulfill the purpose that God put me here for. Nothing trumps that. Nothing. No husband, no children, no nothing trumps that. I'm here to fulfill purpose. When I leave this earth, I want to have used up everything that God put in me to give away to mankind. That's what I came here to do. Period. Anything else is peripheral. That is my position. And I believe that there are lots of other men and women on the earth who are like that. And I feel like Oprah is one of those people. Do you think Oprah would have done all of the things that she has done if she had a couple of children that she had to be home looking after, and she had to be home cooking and cleaning and taking time? She does have a partner though. Let me just qualify that. She has a partner, and I think everybody knows that she's been with Stedman for how many years? You think it's coincidental that they haven't gotten married? You think Oprah couldn't have a husband if she wanted one? I'm pretty sure there are a couple million men out here who would marry Oprah if she just said, I want to get married. She doesn't want to get married, nor does she want any children. She just wants to do what she was put here to do, and she's been doing it, and she is killing it. Are we going to diminish that because she opted not to be a wife and a mom? And the same would apply to the men who choose that path. So that is my very firm but also controversial position. So let's hear what y'all have to say.
I totally agree with you in the sense that, everyone on earth has a purpose, because a relationship and family, going on, it takes up a lot of time and energy and resources. So for me, it creates opportunity costs in society. Like, if, someone, let's say, is forced, well, let's use the situation that, they're pressured into a relationship and then pressured to have a family. Let's say Susan down the road, who is just about managing, or who's just on the poverty line. I'm up the road, and I'm going to use myself for this example, that, if I'm in a position to help because of my state, Susan down the road, I am going to help because I have the time, I have the resources, and I have the capacity to do so. And I think that, everyone, in a sense, like Oprah, the girls in South Africa, I'm sure wouldn't have had that sort of transformation in their lives because of, Oprah, if she was entangled up in a family and all of that. So in a sense, too, we tend to look at family, and this is the point that I want to make before I hand over to Grayson, is that we tend to look at family as maybe just biological in this sense. But we tend to create family by our actions, our deeds of kindness, or we care for others in society. And we can't not think that, we can't be useful in society through the means of family if we don't procreate or whatever. That our procreation is being kind to our fellow neighbor, being, helpful, helping cleaning up, around the village, providing financial assistance where we can, with someone to a school child who can't afford their lunches or whatever. Us being there and even being a parent and even a partner of sorts to others, because you don't want to be tied down to one person or anything, but it's just that we have that flexibility to help more persons, sharing the resources that we've had in a family or in that relationship setting, that we'll be able to flex it more around society. But to Drayson, here's where I'll hand over to him in a sense that, do you see, when you were single, and you mentioned it in terms of being laziness, or being lazy and single, that how is it now that you're married? Do you still have that purpose, or you have leveled up your purpose in life, in terms of your marriage, basically?
Wow. Therese.
Why are you calling out to me?
All right.
Just answer the question.
Okay. Before I answer, well, let me answer Jamal first. You see, when I was single, and I was single and single again. And Therese will know this. I would have spent quality time on myself. I would have revisited a lot of my past years on earth. I would have questioned a lot of things. I would have sat down with professional help to get to know about me and get to know about what I want in life. And my wife is listening and she will tell you, I am not a shaky husband because I was not a shaky single man. Whoever I was then existing in the realm of singleness is who I am now in marriage. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You do not bring a brand new you to marriage. You bring who you were in singleness in marriage. It just so happened that you're now bringing yourself in a partnership agreement with somebody where you're sharing your lives and what's not together. I did not enter marriage as a weak man. I enter knowing my purpose, my role. I enter knowing my responsibilities. I enter knowing that I have to work hard to take care of my family. I have to study so that I can better myself, so I can become attractive in terms of any jobs possible. I could be well up there with the others, Terrace. I enter knowing all of these things. And these are the things that I have been working over the years to develop so that I can be the best me, so that my wife can enjoy what it is to be with a strong, wise man who knows exactly what he's about. And so that is how it is. And that is why I value singleness, because singleness gives me the opportunity to become me, to understand me, to know what I'm about. And people who do not gravitate to wholesome singleness, these are people who basically enter marriage and they wait on other people to fill them up, to make them feel like, okay, this is who you are, to make them understand this is your purpose. And so when it does not work, then what happened? It end up in divorce, where hearts are broken and emotions are running high and all kind of things are destroyed. Why? Because people did not prepare themselves for marriage. Marriage is not a joke. Marriage is a high calling. I see marriage as a ministry. I see something where you have to come with some high levels of preparation. You can't come into marriage not knowing yourself, because who is going to figure you out more than you would have had time to figure you out in singleness? So that is how I will answer that. But Terence, quickly, you asked a question earlier about if some persons are called. And again, I'm a strong believer. I'm a strong Christian believer. And so I would give you my answer from scriptures right there in Matthew 19, 11 to 12. And people can write it down, read it in your own time in Matthew 19, 11 to 12. And for simplicity's sake, I permit me to use the Message Bible. Hear what it says. But Jesus said, not everyone is mature enough to live a married life. It requires a certain aptitude and grace. Marriage isn't for everyone. Some from birth seemingly never give marriage a thought. Others never get asked or accepted. And some decide not to get married for kingdom reasons. But if you are capable of growing into the largeness of marriage, do it. It is quite clear. So the whole thought about all of us should get married or will get married is a myth. It does not exist, because not everybody will be able to master singleness, preparation enough to carry them into a successful marriage. So not everybody is called.
Okay, I saw Manifa come in and we seem to have lost Manifa again. Let me apologize on behalf of Manifa. Manifa is having some technical issues at home at the moment. I really hope we can get her back. But let's continue. I do hear what Jason is saying, and I endorse that. I endorse the idea of excellent singleness. Excellence in singleness leading to excellence in marriage. I think that makes complete sense. And I also endorse the idea that excellence in singleness could just be what people want. Like they just want to be single and work on themselves and show up in the world as the highest and the most authentic version of themselves but by themselves. They don't want to be attached to another human being. And I think that is fine as well. But what do you have to say about the attachment of singleness to purpose sometimes and what that looks like? Can you comment on that?
Well, I strongly believe that sometimes you can only achieve your purpose if you are single, and that's what it is. You see, I cannot tell people what their purpose in life is. People need to have that connection to know what their purpose in life is. And once you figure out that purpose in life, that will tell you whether or not you can attain this purpose with or without an individual next to your side. And that's the reality. Too many times we connect everything to marriage. Oh, I want to do this with somebody, or I have to do. Sometimes you have to do it alone. Sometimes you have to get it done individually and not so much in marriage. So to me, it depends on if you as an individual have spent enough time with yourself, because your purpose is usually connected to your giftedness, to your talents and your skills that God would have given you. So your purpose is connected to that. And once you can understand yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, see what you're good at, then that can lead you into possibly what your purpose is. And when you reach that point, then you have to work on developing that purpose to the extent that your purpose become you. So you're living your purpose. Your purpose is your lifestyle on this entire earth. So that's what it is. You have to be able to get that before you rush into things, because the truth be told, Therese, and of course, Dr. Francis, the truth be told, marriage sometimes take you a little away from yourself, because when you are married, then your mindset changes, because it's no longer I, me, it's we and us. And if you are married to somebody who is weak and did not spend quality time in their singleness to develop themselves, you can find yourself in the most difficult of all situations that exist on this entire earth. And that's what it is. And so you have a lot of marriages around where people solve problems by having sexual intercourse, forgetting that these problems being solved are just temporary. And then when the emotions go back to where they were in the sky, then they come back to reality. They realize when they pull the rug, the problems are still there. And then they realize, hey, what's really going on here? Sex not working as I thought it would have worked, because it's not designed for that. So that is why we have to be so careful as to when we are stepping into this thing called marriage, because it's no longer your thoughts alone or the way you do things. It's how we will do things, how we will organize our lives, so we will move together. It's all about we now, and that can become challenging if you did not prepare for it.
Very good point, because I like the whole aspect of excellence and singleness, because finding your purpose, and I'm now looking at the practical aspects. When you're single and not distracted by a relationship, you then have the time, and as I mentioned, resources and otherwise, to go out into the community and be of use, find things that would help to develop you personally and others. And I do find, and this is something I also come across in dating as well, like you ask persons, what are you involved in? Are you part of any civil society organizations? How active are you in your communities, or even on your workplace in other aspects? And they're like, no. So to me, in that case, when you get into a marriage now, that person cannot stand on their own per se, because they're not involved in anything. So the only thing that they will be involved with is you, and as a result, they will suck your time and your energy. And I do find, especially being sitting on executives in organizations, when persons get coupled up or they get married, they then withdraw themselves from those organizations. Organizations become imperiled because of that. So I do like that, and there's a reason why maybe we are probably born alone, why we enter this world alone, is to find our way, find our purpose, until otherwise, God determines whether we are partnered with somebody or we continue fulfilling a greater purpose alone.
I like that. I like that very much. I think that that is an excellent point. There's a reason you're born alone. It's because that there are certain things that need to be to occur while you are alone before you eventually move on to partnership with other human beings, right? There's an order to this thing that people often overlook. But I have a question that I want to throw at you guys. Might be a little bit controversial, but I believe that I come across people all the time who claim that they were called to singleness. They believe they were called to be single, called not to be married and not to have children and so on and so forth. And while I do firmly believe that there are, as I said just now, I do firmly believe that there are people who are called to this lifestyle. I also know people who I am pretty certain that they were called to just remain on their own because their purpose requires it. I also think that there are some people who are not called to that, but who take it for themselves and decide that this, I was called to this life. I was called to remain alone, right? And I believe that sometimes people use that as because it is, I believe, a more acceptable explanation for singleness and childlessness than one would otherwise have available, right? And so I feel like some people latch on to that because it is what sounds best. It is what comes across as more appropriate to say. Um, I believe that there are some people who just never found the one and who have decided that God called them to singleness. What do you think of this? And how do we how do you determine which category you fall into? Is there a way? I mean, I feel like I already have an answer sorted out in my head for that, but I want to hear what you think. How do you determine who falls into which category? How do you know which category you are in personally?
Okay, let me start and then Jamal can continue. I think honestly, Therese, that a lot of times our experiences push us to redefine who we are. I might have been in a bad relationship and then I might decide, okay, I don't want to go to that again. So all of a sudden, the calling upon my life is now clear that I'm supposed to be single until I meet somebody else who decide to give me something else different that I desire. So my thing is, a lot of times single people do not understand. One, they don't understand what it is, the definition of singleness. They don't have the knowledge of what singleness is. They don't understand that who they are. Because as an individual, I know what my desires were. My wife asked me just today, because we went to the questions today, and she was asking me, have you ever thought about remaining single? And I said, no. And I'm saying in my mind, I just remained single for a long time because I know what I was working on so that I can be the best me. But I never thought about forever being single, Therese. I mean, one of the things I must tell people that God made me with some sexual desires there that they shoot anytime. And so I wanted to be in a marriage where I can express myself without somebody looking over my shoulder or watching under my door to see who I bring in my house and those things and so on. I don't do them things. I didn't want that type of life. So let me get married. You understand? And marriage is not just that for me, but that was part of it. So what I'm trying to say is that there are some people genuinely who are single and they are satisfied, full stop. They're not looking for any individual. They're happy with themselves. They're happy with their skin. They're happy with their continuing what their purpose in life is. Their focus, their mindset is on other things other than a relationship. They're happy with opening their own door, driving their own car, saving their own money, making their own money. They're happy with all of that. And that is good. But there are some who are being forced to do that and they're unhappy. One, sometimes because they're not finding anybody. Two, sometimes because they feel as though they don't level up to what's out there and they feel as though that, okay, let me not get into that race. But not that they don't want to get in, but they're depriving themselves from getting in because probably they don't love themselves or something is wrong or whatever the case might be. But those who are genuinely in it, those are the ones who benefits the most from the whole essence of singleness because they understand it to the core. Those who are forced to be in it because of other things, these are the ones who experience extreme loneliness extreme how you call it, dissatisfaction with life, and sometimes it can go to high levels of anger and those kind of things like, what is wrong with me, questioning yourself on a daily basis, when will somebody come and knock on my door, and those kind of things and so on. So I strongly believe that you have the two extreme. There is a two extreme, and I think it exists.
I look at it as black and white and the gray area in between. So the white would be, look, I'm single and happy. I have no issue being, alone in this world doing my thing. The black still equally good. I'm paired up. I'm happy in my relationship. Have a family, otherwise. But this the gray area which Jason just hinted to is whether somebody's just restless. They want, a relationship, and in somewhat, in a sense, they don't know whether they're perfect being alone, or not perfect, but being better alone, or being partnered. And in that case, well, personally for me, I know when I tend to set benchmarks or targets for my life. Says, okay, by this age I want to accomplish this. By this age, so I'm saying, so before I said I want to go into my 30s thinking, what, settle down, start to look about long term, whether it's the partner or whatever. But it's a matter that you get through a lot of these stumbling blocks over the time, and you become very hurt. And sometimes we tend to, as Jason said, we define our positions based on our experiences. That we become hurt, and then because in our hurt state, we then impose, say, singleness is for us, or I'm called to be single, when in fact that's just a reaction for being hurt. But in fact, that if a shining princess comes, Cinderella comes along, or your knight in shining armor comes along, you switch that position again because of that restless yearning. But I think for some persons, we'll be able to flex the whole parameter in terms of, okay, if I'm single, I'm happy. If it so happens that someone comes along, I'll be still happy. But I think it's in that middle part that we ought not to be restless in terms of what our purpose ought to be. And that is how we should try to avoid being in that area, because we don't want to be in an undefined area of life. And whether or not we are human, we are social beings, and we have to have some sort of interaction with human beings, whether on different levels, whether it's sexually, socially, physically, psychologically as well, intellectually as well. But it's just a matter for us to understand our purpose. And I think MJ said it in the comments that, even in marriage, we are still individuals, interdependent individuals, and we must be able to be comfortable with our individuality before we can go anywhere else first. So that's how I would answer your question in terms of how would you place yourself into which category in terms of whether or not you're comfortable with your individuality, or whether your individuality is best maximized by being with someone as well.
Right.
If I may add one thing, one of the things that we need to be very careful of is this. We need to be careful that what we are preaching for ourselves is not what we are living. There are a lot of persons who claim that they have the gift of singleness, but what they portray to the public is not the gift of singleness. And so when the public sees certain practices out there, the public can only but speak on what the eyes would have allowed them to see. People don't know your personal situation, but they know what they're seeing from a distance. And so, for example, if a man decides that, he has a gift of singleness, why is it he's extremely close to these females? And why is it he asking them question about settling down, and what is their plan for the future, and all of those things and so on? You're giving the wrong impression, because the minute you start to talk to a lady about, hey, what are you doing in the next 4 years, or what are your dreams, or what are your desires, or all of these things, and you're getting deep into the woman's zone, then you are showing to the lady, I have a little interest in you. You understand? And so when now the lady get activated because of what she's getting from you, and she starts to come after you, then you jump out and say, hey, hold up there, I am a single man, I embrace singleness. So you see the problem that we have there? You're preaching one thing, but you're living something else. And I don't like to talk about this, because I know this can be one of the hot topics and what's not. But I do not understand, Terrace, for the life of me, how somebody who claims that they have the gift of singleness and that person is involved sexually. The reason why I don't understand it is that when you are involved sexually with somebody and you have the gift of singleness, sex actually bonds. It brings people together. It actually joins hearts and spirits together. So how do I have the gift of singleness, but yet still I want to be joined with so many persons? It's kind of a confusion in my head. I'm not sure if Mr. Francis can help me, but I find it to be confusion. Now, I am not telling anybody out there whether or not they should have sex, because I have no control over what you do and your passion. But what I'm saying is that it's a big confusion that I am telling others I have the gift of singleness, but I am involved sexually, which is the highest peak of joining spirits together, bonds together, and what's that together. So I am a bit kind of a lost there, and I'm seeing Monifa is back just to answer
Yes.
that question.
Monifa came back right now.
Right in time.
I need to qualify something quickly. So let me just make sure I understand what Drayson is saying. So Drayson is saying if you were called to remain single all your life, that means you're also called to remain celibate.
I
That's what I want.
Because single and celibate are not necessarily the same thing. So if you have a calling to remain single, like let's go back to Oprah. Called to remain single, no marriage, no children, but is she celibate? I'd be willing to bet money that she's not. So I don't know
I,
that those
I
necessarily go together. How does that
because
work?
singleness can somewhat, well, I'm going to introduce another term apart from the glucose and daddy and whatnot.
Oh my
It is
goodness.
what we call NSA, no strings attached. And Jason mentioned in the fact that when persons starting make certain inquiries in terms of person's life, in terms of where they see themselves in 5 years, it could be that the person who is asking that is trying to determine whether or not that person would become clingy, or whether that person would be attached to a particular idea that say I'm asking the question, do not believe or do not want. Maybe that person wants to, another term, roam around a bit. So some persons enjoy their singleness, but they want to have particular relations. So a relationship doesn't have to be the full gamut of everything, but it's like property law. You have different property rights. You have use, you can abuse or dispose, or you could use another term in terms of renting of sorts. So in those, I would call them the omni rights rather, that you have different parts of the entire right you'd want to use. But in this case, you just want to use a subset of those rights. And maybe that's
Lord
what
have
persons are
mercy.
looking for going on.
This just went south.
So, so that is it, because we tend to think that, and it's very from, especially from a biblical point of view, you want to have a relationship that would have sexual, everything wrapped up in one, and you can't, it's indivisible. But modern day trends is that you can divide a lot of these rights, and some guys or some women just want to use particular subsets, and I don't see a problem with that. It's just a fact that, again, everybody's not built, or everyone is just not going to conform to the enjoyment of that full bonding marriage type archetype, the more ideal biblical structure or interpretation of what a relationship should look like. So the matter in terms of whether picking what we want out of the ideal type, whether that is more detrimental to us, or we can make it work for the better.
So what do you have to say about that, Drayson? He said you can divide it into subsets and you're only accessing certain rights.
I think Mr. Francis is trying to be legalistic. I know he's probably versed with the law and those things, but why am I making this comment, Terrace, is that marriage, you see, when you get married to somebody, right? Your marriage is only consummated during sex, right? When you have sex with that individual, you bond with that individual. It's not when you go to the church and you exchange vows, the bonding take place to that level. It takes place during sex. If if I am preaching that I have the gift of singleness, why am I sharing my spirit with multiple persons, or even why am I sharing my spirit at all with others? How will those same individuals who make up society will be able to herald that I am indeed someone who have the gift of singleness when they are talking and my spirit is merged with theirs? So what I'm saying, it's a bit contradictory in my head. Now, I think that when somebody has decided to be single, it has to do a lot with working on self. I do not think singleness have anything to do with sharing yourself with others, because you're moving away with singleness the minute you start to do that. You're developing you. You're trying to find out about you. You're trying to work on you, understand you. But then when you start to merge with somebody, I'm not sure. And that is where it becomes contradictory in my head. Hence the reason my definition for singleness based on the relationship topic. My definition for singleness is the absence of a physical partner, hence the reason you're not married. And it is also the detachment or the disconnection of an emotional or psychological experience or person. That is what it is. Anything that controls this mind that is not coming from your power and influence of developing yourself, it has been compromising your singleness. And so there are a lot of persons who have been sexually involved, and while they're trying to develop themselves, they cannot fully, some people cannot fully, because there's somebody else to control the button. And so we need to be so careful. And that is just my thought when it comes to that. As I said, please don't shoot me down.
I
It is
feel
just
like
my
Jamal.
opinion. Just my
I had to actually go into my law notes to even
Oh
expand
my! He went into his law notes. Oh my goodness! It's so
because let's go back to the whole property. We're not calling anybody property, but we talk
okay.
about the use right. So you could lease. Let's say we could have relationships where we have leased engagements. So you have an arrangement, a mutual arrangement of sorts. Then you have a case where you just use particular parts of it that you like. So you engage. So let's talk about the lease first. So the lease is, let's say, okay, we have something going, let's say something maybe platonic, that we go to restaurants and we enjoy each other's company of that sort, and we interact in that case. Using the use rights now in a case that, okay, could be sexual, that we have, as we enjoy, doing our do, and we like being kinky and whatnot, and we seem to have a compatibility of that. But outside of that, we are not compatible fully. But in that aspect, we can do that. Then you have cases where you could operate certain things. So you're going out and you need a partner to follow you to a party or whatever. That person could be a wing person, because they understand that, that is their limited purpose, the operation. And then you have a case where you're occupied, whereby it's just temporary. We go through phases in life. I met you this week, we gel this week, but then things just naturally fade a bit. So it's somewhat divided. So in this case, you're kind of just, again, going back to what I said earlier, just using what best suits you in a case. Because again, everybody cannot fulfill that archetype, vision of what, the Bible preaches or whatnot. I'm not saying I'm advocating for it, but I'm just giving an explanation for it. That we sometimes have to, and we have to sometimes accept persons for being what they are. Might not like what they're doing, might not conform to what we're doing, but the fact is it exists because persons and human beings are very selfish creatures. Whether we like it or not, we do have some sort of selfishness. Whether or not we want to accept it or not, that's for us where we start to create our own boundaries. We don't interact with persons unless they want the whole cake. But if we start dividing up the cake and saying you can have a bit here or whatever, then that is different. So that just takes a nuanced look in terms of how we look at singleness, because singleness doesn't involve just staying home or just one-on-one dating, but it involves a multiplicity of things that We give a person, another person, ourselves, one aspect of ourselves in this regard, another person, another aspect. So it's like you're roaming around, and sometimes even in our individual interactions, that we then find maybe someone who might, tick all the boxes that we're looking for by this, them using that subsidiary property right, so to speak, and then we can explore in a sense. So as human beings, we're very fluid in terms of our interactions and what we do. And I don't want us to think that, singleness is just a big block, sitting down waiting for cement to be poured upon us to be part of a greater house.
There are levels of singleness. Next week we're going to come back and talk about polygamy versus monogamy, right? Just want to throw that out there. That discussion is coming because I feel like we cannot but follow up this discussion with that discussion, but we'll speak more on that later. But let's start rounding up. I want to round up by asking this question. What's the difference between being alone and being lonely?
Well, for me, being alone just means that you are without another. But without another, you're still living life. Being lonely now is that you're without another, but you feel like if there's no one there for you, like this, no other way to turn, no other way to turn to. It's like, it's a sense that you start to feel that your purpose in life it's not there. It's like there's nothing happening for you, and you're basically isolated from reality. And in that case, we all know which one we prefer to be in.
Mhm.
But I think being lonely brings in a lot of other conditions that, experts like Therese would need to step in, because it could lead persons into a very dark place where they then say, okay, I am, lonely. And as such, if there's nothing for me in this world, I will then take myself out of this world. Because I've known some cases too, and linking with the topic, that persons have become so desperate in terms of trying to not be single that, they then say, not, if I can't get anyone, that's it. There's nothing happening for me. I should not be around. And then they seek to take their lives. So it brings a nuance aspect in terms of, all of this, and a sobering thought to this conversation that, that as human beings, that we ought to be very mindful of others, be very respectful of others too, because sometimes what we project could even shift persons from feeling alone to be even lonely, in a sense, and we just have to be very mindful of that.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. You want to say anything on that, Drayson?
I think it was explained.
Agreed. So let's go over to the comment section. I actually have some messages from Monifa here. Monifa wants to say that being single does not mean no dating. She says I can date and I can form non-sexual relationships. She says, I don't think if I am having sex with someone that they are controlling me. I think that is in response to what Drayson shared regarding the fact that singleness is really disqualified if you are sexually involved with somebody. Well, I know that discussion could go on and on and
MJ is
on.
using her subsidiary property rights, so to speak.
Huh?
So that's good.
I want to read some comments. Um, I want to read some comments from this, and I want to read some of MJ's comments in particular. So I'm scrolling back up to go back to some comments that were not highlighted earlier. MJ says, "Don't rehearse a thing. Some people need to be told what's up, straight up, especially the old ones. Let Paulie know that bread gone up, egg of $14." And $100 can't even feed one child for a week. Let Janet from church know that you're not married because the dating pool got pee in it. Our parents think this is their generation. Let them know as blunt as possible that it ain't. All right. So she said what she said there. Um, let's see. Another one from MJ. Depending on who you are, relationships are a distraction. So I do believe that some people are meant to be single as well. As you said, Queen, relationships take a lot of time and energy. Sometimes you can't find that balance to focus on your goals. So putting down a relationship is wise. Maybe a relationship in that time and space isn't your purpose, something else is. Why be in a relationship when you can't give your 100%? Relationships are not 50-50, and it doesn't have to just be a goal. That is okay. Let's see. Anything else that we want to pull up here? There is another comment I saw that I really wanted to share. I think Marcella is in agreement with Drayson. Who would have thought that MJ and Drayson could agree on anything? I mean, MJ says being single and celibate should go hand in hand, but it doesn't have to. I may not fully agree with Jason, but I do understand 100%. Getting to that point takes a lot of maturity, I believe. It takes understanding yourself as energy and a spiritual being. That doesn't happen overnight. It also depends on your goals in life. Why are you single? Why are you celibate? Jason is saying that sex isn't just physical, and once we understand that more, we shouldn't be inclined to scratch that itch. All right. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. Chris says most of what Jamal described just now on people who consider themselves single and not embracing their singleness. Any comment on that, Jamal? All those property rights, those people are not embracing singleness.
Well, you see, the singleness. Who are we to define what is single? The single people tend to substitute single for freedom. They have the freedom to do what they would want to do in this world. Because again, even if you're not comfortable in your singleness, according to Chris, it's like that person is saying, look, that the person needs to demonstrate or act like how they would be in a relationship. But the fact is, because we have this narrow view of how we're supposed to act in society and whatnot, we then constrain, ourselves in terms of what people can and can't do. We may not agree with it, may not align with our values, but the fact is it's currently being practiced. And it is a nuanced take on singleness that persons, and again, singleness equates to freedom. Because a lot of people tend to think, for example, maybe person may look at Trace and say, look, he in prison. He can't go out to the boys and do what he's
I have a friend. I mean, not to cut you off. I have a
Yeah,
friend
go ahead.
who refers to weddings as lynchings.
Yeah,
Literally,
yeah.
anytime somebody invites him to a wedding, he will say, somebody invited me to a lynching today. Because somebody invited me to a lynching. Because in his mind,
Mm-hmm.
once you go down that aisle, it's a wrap.
That is it. And we tend to have a joke among my friends as well. Similar lines that, we just said, boss, we lost another one, It's like, because again, of that whole aspect that once you get into a relationship, or even go down that line of partnership, that you tend to extricate yourself to the things that happened before. And again, what makes you as an individual, because you're in a relationship too, even though both of you are individuals, that you're interdependent of sorts. So you have to somewhat cede your individuality to provide compromises along the way. And in the wider aspects of that because of that, you can no longer be who you used to be if you're outside of a relationship. And again, here's where the freedom aspect comes along. So yes, as MJ said, you could date, you could engage in whether polygamous activity, or you could, do whatever you would want to do, because again, human rights and a lot of other aspects, you're free to do certain things. So I just want persons to not to define society like how the Bible would define it, because again, not many persons are subscribed to biblical values. So you have to somewhat not embrace, but at least respect, or at least show some sort of deference to realities that exist currently.
Terence, if I may add one thing here, I think Jamal has given society strength in terms of they defining what they think things should be, and we being pressured at the end, as what we would have discussed earlier. Because if we do not establish limitations and boundaries to what we consider to be singleness, then society will have all right to come at us, because we are confusing ourselves and we are also confusing society. If I am single and I have entitlement to all of that sort of freedom, it actually put me in a position where I am not really single. It's almost like take the title, but do as you feel, because you have the freedom to fall wherever you want, but just carry the title. I'm a bit confused there, because there must be some established boundary, some limitation to say if you cross over, then you're no longer single, you become. And I don't want people to think that only when you're married you have escaped singleness or you move away from singleness, because I don't think that's the case. Marriage is not the breaker of singleness. There are other things that can actually break that entire singleness, break the opportunity for you to get to understand yourself and spend that alone time with you, so that you can understand you better than how anybody else will understand you. But that is why my challenge comes with the 10 billion freedoms that our dear lawyer is presenting to us, because now it tells me, like, for example, society now can define singleness for us based on what Jamal said, because society will say, hey, well, singleness is not really a term that exists then, because you are saying one thing in your introduction, and then in the belly of the matter, I am hearing there are so many branches of this thing, and then in the conclusion of this program, I am hearing a different definition. And so that is where we often confuse ourselves where singleness is concerned. And that is why I asked earlier, what aspect of singleness are we looking at? Which one are we looking at? And finally, what I realized with a lot of us, Terrace, is this. A lot of us want to embrace certain things, but remember, we are emotional beings as well. And we want to be able to embrace what you're offering, but bring our own attachment to what we think will add the icing to what you're offering. So if the cake is chocolate and it is chocolate cake, then MJ might say, but wait, I love cheese, cream cheese. So add a little cream cheese to the top so that I can fully enjoy the chocolate cake. The dynamics of the chocolate cake will change, because it's no longer full chocolate anymore. It's chocolate cream cheese. You understand what I'm saying? So it has changed. Now, somebody else might come and say, I love strawberry. Add some strawberry to the cream cheese. And you see what is happening there? Every individual will be adding on to what is there, to the point where society now come and say, hey, this is what it's supposed to be. And then we're the same one who run away from society and say society pressuring us. But we are the one who created it. If we had left it like the chocolate cake, it would not have been a problem. But all of these additions, Mr. Francis, it create that problem.
You see, this is black and white thinking I was talking about
Oh
earlier.
my goodness,
We
not the
have
black and
the
white
black, the white,
thinking.
and the gray area. Because in the beginning, yes, we each have our own definition. Because we're also entitled to our own way in terms of how we want to live our singleness. But it does not exclude the fact that, or does not preclude that other persons have different definitions to singleness and how they want to live. So it depends. So it's like you go to the supermarket, you have different types of cranberry juices that are probably on the shelf. It's for you, as the one who want to buy the juice, to pick up the one that you would want to consume at the end of the day. So it's not a case that, we sometimes have to think, okay, our personal belief is that singleness should be ordered in a particular way, and that when we get into marriage, or we should not engage in things that ought to be the preserve of marriage. That is our belief, or maybe most of Jason's belief. But at the same time,
Our belief.
but at the same time, the fact is that there are other persons out there, even who are members of our own belief as well, who are exercising otherwise. And I think most of the discussion here should be, how should we, as single, according to a particular form of scripture or beliefs, interact with persons who might be of the same belief of sorts, but still not subscribing fully to all of the beliefs as well. And again, that plows into the whole aspect of freedoms. We're all free to choose, and we're also free to reject.
I feel like this program is going to have a part two, and you know what I'm going to call the part two? 50 Shades of Singleness. That's what I'm going to call
Because we have gotten into a lot of the practical one-on-one,
the nuances
Exactly.
of singleness. We need to
Well,
come back and have that conversation.
But
okay.
there is only one ultimate issue that is creating problem with singleness stands. There is nothing else that will create that discussion, and that is sex. Nothing else. There is nothing else. If you look at it, singleness, I can build my home, develop, I can extend my territory, I can have an excellent job, I can have the best profession I want, I can study as much as Teresa and get 10 degrees, I can do whatever it is. The only thing that will create that kind of a problem is sex, because the reality is, and this is what a lot of people who are single get trapped in. If I claim I am single and I am sexually active, because according to our goodly lawyer, it's a freedom. If I am sexually active, then I will never know if I was basically designed to be single, because I am enjoying what was designed for marriage in my single realm. So I don't have anything to look forward beyond that to say, okay, I wonder if I should try out the marriage thing. I wonder if I'm called for that marriage thing. And so guess what happened? A lot of people who are quote unquote single, highly sexually active, enter marriage not understanding the seriousness of the union and the seriousness of that coming together, because you are being so loosely in your singleness that marriage now becomes, okay, whatever will be, will be. And I think these are things that we just need to look into. As I said earlier, I knew Mr. Francis would not have agreed with me. I knew that, but I said it still. And I am not here to force anybody to agree with me. But what I want people to understand, the time that you spend to value you and get to understand you, trust me, you will be amazed to see the individual you are and who you can become. Too many interruptions have been in our singleness. And so we are still fighting for who we are. We're still fighting to understand us. You're 35, you're 40 years, and you still don't know your purpose. You're still questioning people. What do you think I should do? Or what do you think I should say? Or what do you think I should study? You're questioning because you have not spent that quality alone time to understand who you are and who is existing in that being. And I think if we do that, we will be a force to reckon with, and we'll be able to accomplish much more. We'll be able to have a sweeter marriage life, because marriage will not be about, Teresa, I have to depend on you fully and you depend on me fully. Marriage will be about, I bring my glass full, you bring your glass full, and we are basically trying to see who can overflow each other the most. Even though you don't overflow me, I don't full already. You understand? So that is what it is. But that comes because you have an effective singleness going in your way.
Believe it or not, I probably, well, personally, I would agree totally with Drayson, but sometimes in discussions like this, you have to push a slightly different narrative to make the discussion a bit interesting. But
Noted, Jamal. Noted.
yeah. But to a degree, let me preface that. But just generally though, because I'm seeing the comments in terms of there was Kevin was saying that, he seems to be getting the air that we're saying that, singleness is about the spirit of lust. It's not really about the spirit of lust, because lust tend to go into a different topic in terms of,
I think that's a whole
Yeah.
other discussion there. Yeah.
But to go back to what Drayson was saying and to tie in with that is a sense that, and it goes back to also what was discussed a few shows back in terms of test driving, that, Drayson was saying that we were engaging in things that are, again, for the preserve of marriage. But then again, some persons want to know what they're going to get into before actually getting into it. And should people, deny themselves from that right of, finding out, or I tend to call it, engaging in activities for research purposes, whether whether or not, that's permissible, and whether too, such research activities would hamper how persons would perceive certain their role or their duty, or I won't say duty, but more so themselves in a relationship, how they see themselves in an ideal relationship that would not only be there but last and sustain itself over time. Um, so
I think we know
again,
how,
going
how
back to
Dreesen
freedom,
feels about the test
we
driving.
know. Yeah, we know because he just goes to the car dealer. I want that and
I
drives
want
away.
that.
Mm.
And I got an excellent car.
Right.
No test drive, excellent car.
Oh, gentlemen, gentlemen, gentlemen. We must wrap up this discussion, but I'm serious about having a discussion about polygamy versus monogamy. And I'm probably going to contact you about this. I don't know if Drayson is going to want to be a part of that panel, but I believe Jamal will.
I think Dresden would probably need to add, his usual, philosophical, you know, and rich and deep biblical values to the conversation to ground some of us who tend to enjoy roaming a bit. Well, I'm excluding myself from roaming. I'm not saying I do or do not. I'm not saying, but for those who roam,
Whoever is doing it, whoever is
like,
doing it,
exactly.
right? All right, guys, let's wrap this discussion up so that we can get on with our Sunday evenings. I'm going to give each one of you an opportunity to give a parting shot to our listeners before we close off the broadcast. What is that one takeaway that you want to make sure everybody is logging off with? Let's start with you, Jamal.
Just simple. Whether you're single or not, find your purpose in life.
That's a good takeaway. That's a very good takeaway. And you, Drayson?
Okay, well, mine is 5 points. Quickly though. It's good. Singleness is good. And these are 5 ways you can enjoy your singleness. Number one, don't so much focus on having a relationship. Like, stop fantasizing about future spouse or marriage, because remember, you're trying to develop you. Leave that a while. It will come. When you fix you, then you can move on. Number two, know what your single purpose is. Know what it is and go after it. Establish a personal relationship with your God, because that's where you get guidance. The supreme being provide ultimate guidance. Surround yourself with persons of like minds. So if you know that you are single, surround yourself with persons who actually value singleness as well, so that you can encourage each other, motivate and inspire each other, and understand that being single is not a sin. This is something that people need to understand.
It's
Being
not a
single
sin.
is not a sin. It does not make you less than anybody else. A matter of fact, singleness is more important than marriage, because in order for you to reach marriage, you must have an excellent singleness. A poor singleness gives you a poor marriage. So obviously, marriage is dependent upon the singleness that you have. That's what I will leave with the viewers.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here with me this evening. I'm just sorry that Manifa's technology failed, because I feel like Manifa would have really had some things to say about this, but it's okay. We're going to bring her back. We're going to bring her back another day. And maybe, just maybe, we might have her on the monogamy versus polygamy panel. I feel like we can make that happen, but that discussion is coming. I was literally just inspired while we were having this conversation to do a live about polygamy versus monogamy. I feel like that's an important discussion to have as well. So we're going to look into that. But in the meantime, we're going to wrap up this evening's discussion. I want to say thank you to all the people who have been watching us. I know people are watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter right now. Thank you very much for being here for this evening's discussion. And thank you for those of you who have been interacting with us. The chat section has been popping off for the entire discussion. So we appreciate you being here with us for the entire duration of tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for your continued love and support of the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform. As MJ would say, gratitude. Gratitude, gratitude to you all. Thank you so much for being here. So, we're going to leave it here for tonight. I will see you all next week, Sunday, at the same time for another live broadcast, which may or may not be about monogamy versus polygamy, if I can pull that panel together. So, don't blink, keep your ears to the ground to make sure that you don't miss it in case it's happening. But in the meantime, remember to be a beautiful week. Bye, everyone.